The request no human expected. Jared Hall had only been on the Andros space station for 2 days when he received the strange request. He was unpacking his massage oils and folding towels in the tiny therapy room when the door opened quietly and she stepped in. She was tall and beautiful in a way Jared had never seen before. Her skin shimmered like liquid metal under the station lights, and her long silver hair flowed behind her like silk in zero gravity. Eyes were large and glowing softly blue. She moved slowly, as if every step was made with purpose. Jared stood up quickly, thinking she must be someone important. She wore a long robe that glowed at the edges and a small crest near her shoulder. He recognized the symbol. She was Viren class royalty from the Zalari system, a high-ranking alien noble. Before he could speak, she looked at him and said something that made him freeze. They say human hands carry healing energy. I want to feel that touch too. Jared hesitated, not sure if he had understood her words right. He blinked and said gently, "You want a massage?" She nodded once, her expression unreadable. The station had told Jared that his services were for all species, but no one warned him that a Zalari noble might walk in so soon. He guided her to the massage table, unsure of how her body would react to human pressure. But she lay down calmly, her robe slipping off her shoulders, revealing soft glowing skin like polished crystal. Jared kept his movements professional and gentle. He poured the special earth-based oil into his hands and rubbed it between his palms to warm it. Began at her shoulders, using slow, smooth strokes. Almost immediately, her body began to shimmer. A soft glow spread across her back, pulsing like waves. She didn't speak, but her breathing changed. It became slower, then deeper, then something else. She let out a sound not of pain but of release. He worked carefully down her spine, then to her lower back. His fingers pressed into the muscles, and with every movement, her glow shifted and moved. At one point, she lifted her head slightly and whispered, "No one has ever made me feel this before." Jared paused. "You want me to stop?" "No," she said softly. "Please continue." He nodded and continued his movements, focusing on his breathing, keeping his hands steady. When he finished, she sat up slowly, her hair falling over her glowing back. Her eyes met his. Her voice was calm, but something in her tone had changed. "Something is different now. I can feel something inside." Jared tilted his head, confused. "Are you in pain?" "No," she said again, standing to her full height. "But my body is reacting in a way I do not understand." She walked out of the room without another word, her robe trailing behind her. Jared cleaned up the room, but his hands shook slightly. He had massaged many beings before, but none had ever said something like that night. As he lay in the small crew quarters staring at the ceiling, he thought about her eyes and the way her body reacted to his touch. He told himself it was probably just a species-specific reaction, nothing to worry about. Just as he began to drift off to sleep, he heard a soft chime at his door. He sat up. Who would visit at this hour? He opened the door and his heart jumped. She stood there again, this time with her robe tighter and her face more pale. "There's something moving inside me," she said quietly, "and it started after you touched me." Jared stepped back, his mind racing. What does that mean? Her hand reached for his wrist, and when their skin touched again, her entire body shimmered like the stars. "You awakened something," Enmesh whispered, "and now I cannot go to anyone else, only you." Swallowed hard as the hallway lights flickered. She wasn't threatening him, she wasn't angry, she was afraid, and she trusted him. His simple massage had triggered something far bigger than he could ever understand. He looked at her, unsure what to say. "Come in," he said at last. She stepped into his room, and the door slid closed behind them, and in that moment Jared knew his quiet job as a healer had just become something far more dangerous and far more personal. Something deep inside this alien woman had changed, and now he was the only one who could help her understand it or survive it. Jared woke up to a soft sound in the corner of his room. It was her. Valari stood with her back to him, arms crossed over her stomach as if trying to hold something. In the glow from her skin was brighter than last night, and her breathing came in waves like she was trying not to cry. "I should not be here," she whispered, "but I had nowhere else to go." Jared sat up slowly, trying to understand what he was seeing. robe was open at the front, and under it her belly had a faint golden pulse as if something inside was alive. And moving, he stood up, walked toward her carefully, and asked if she was in pain. She shook her head slowly, but her hands trembled. It started growing the moment I left your room yesterday. I felt heat deep inside, and then it began to shift like something small and alive was making space inside my body. Jared had no idea what to say. He was a massage therapist, not a doctor, but this was more than strange. It felt impossible. He asked if she wanted to see the station. Medics, her answer came quickly and sharp. No, they will separate us. They will call it contamination. They might try to take it out. Jared looked at her again, trying to stay calm. He had heard stories of species with fast biological shifts, but nothing like this. She placed his hand gently on her stomach, and he felt a soft movement like a ripple under her skin. Her eyes locked onto his as she whispered, "You did this." Jared stepped back, heart pounding. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It was just a massage, nothing more." She nodded slowly, her expression more confused than angry. "I believe you, but my species reacts to deep touch in strange ways. Ancestors used energy bonding, not physical mating. We lost that practice for centuries. Maybe your human touch reignited it." Jared leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of her words. This was not just about her, it involved him too, and now whatever was happening might change both their lives. He told her they needed help, not just any help, but someone who could understand both human and alien biology. She agreed, but only if she could stay with him. She said her body only stayed calm when he was near. When he was not close, her heartbeat spiked and her temperature rose dangerously. Jared agreed and called the central medic line from the wall panel. A calm robotic voice answered, asking the nature of the emergency. Hesitated, then simply said, "Unstable reaction in non-human body, possibly linked to physical contact." The voice confirmed that a team was on the way. Minutes later, the door slid open, and two medics in clean white suits stepped in, one human and one from the Zilari medical unit. They scanned Vilari from a distance and looked at Jared suspiciously. She refused to leave his side. They asked questions, but her answers were simple. "I am not sick, but something inside me is growing, and it will not stop." The Zilari medic looked shocked and turned to Jared. "Did you bond with her? Did you engage in any ritual or energy exchange?" Jared shook his head. "I only gave her a massage." The medic checked her readings and then froze. "There is a life form inside. It has both your energy signature as Vilari." Gasped and touched her stomach again. Jared stared at the scan. It looked like a small light inside her body, pulsing gently. Human medic asked Jared to follow him outside, but Vilari clutched his arm tightly. "Do not leave," she begged. "They will not understand." The medics discussed behind a sealed wall while Jared stood silently next to her. Vilari leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "My people will say this is shameful, but my heart tells me it is something new." Jared whispered back, "I never wanted this to happen, but now I will not walk away." The medics returned and said the council had to be in for med cross-species energy. Imprinting was rare and possibly dangerous. They would need to isolate Vilari for more scans. Jared stepped in front of her. "If she goes, I go too." The medics exchanged glances, then agreed. Both would be moved to an observation suite. Jared helped Vilari walk slowly to the transport pod. She was tired, and her glow flickered as if her body was fighting to stay stable inside the pod. She leaned against him and closed her eyes. "You bring calm," she whispered. "Even my cells know." I've looked down at her hand, resting on his, and in that moment, he realized this was no accident. Something deep, ancient, and hidden unlocked, and whatever it was had already started to grow. The council chamber was quiet, but filled with tension. Jared stood in the center, surrounded by high-ranking beings from across the galaxy. Each of them wore a different uniform and carried a different symbol on their chest, but all shared one thing in common: their eyes were fixed on him with suspicion. Vilari sat just behind a curved force field, her hand on her stomach, her glow flickering like a candle in wind. The head counselor, a tall, four-armed being with a voice like a drum, stepped forward and spoke firmly. "Explain what you did to her." Jared swallowed hard, and tried to keep his voice calm. I gave her a massage using standard earth oils, no ritual, no energy binding, no physical mating, just pressure point therapy like I was trained to do. A low murmur moved through the chamber. Another counselor, one with glistening scales and bright orange eyes, tapped a data screen and said, "Medical scans show that the life form inside Valari carries human markers. This cannot be denied." Jared looked over at Valari, and she nodded as if giving him silent strength. "I did not know this could happen," he said. "No one warned me that touch alone could cause reproduction in her species." Scholar from the edge of the room stood and adjusted her robe. Records show that ancient Zalari once had bonding rituals through touch, but the practice was banned over 500 years ago. If her biology still holds that trait, it is not documented in any recent medical registry. The head counselor looked back at Valari and asked, "Do you confirm the event happened as the human described?" She stood slowly, her presence still elegant. Despite her clear fatigue, she said, "He never forced anything, and he never touched me in a way that was improper. My body responded to him because of a deeper connection, something that neither of us expected." A younger counselor leaned forward, his face pale. "Then, why does the embryo show signs of rapid growth? Why is the energy signature multiplying?" Valerie looked down and spoke gently, "Because my body has accepted him as my mate." Jared's heart skipped a beat at those words. The room went still. Word mate carried weight in many alien cultures. It meant more than union, than permanence. Another member of the council rose, his voice full of concern. "This could be dangerous if the child is unstable. It could pose a threat to both races." Valari raised her voice for the first time, sharp and clear. "Then study me, scan me, but do not take him away from me. If I lose contact with him, my body will reject the bond, and I may die." Jared stepped forward, his voice steady. "Now I will stay with her. Whatever happens, I will not leave." The council paused and then whispered among themselves. Finally, the head counselor raised his hand. "For silence, we must understand what caused this. You say you used earth oils during the massage. Can you provide the exact compound?" Jared nodded and listed the ingredients. Oils were made from natural herbs and plant extracts found on Earth. One of them was called uric root, known to reduce stress. A scientist in the corner took notes quickly and said, "Uric root has hormonal effects on some alien systems. Combined with skin contact and deep neural touch, it might trigger dormant reproductive responses." Another counselor added, "Then this may not be an accident, but a rare biological compatibility." Jared felt a strange weight in his chest. He looked at Valari again and saw how her eyes had softened. She was not afraid anymore. She was choosing this, even though it meant standing in front of her own leaders and defending a human. The council gave their decision. Valari and Jared would be kept under close watch in a secure healing chamber. They would be studied, but not separated, if her condition remained stable and the child continued to develop safely. The council would begin a full scientific investigation. As the session ended, Jared walked beside Valari down the long white hall to the private chamber. She leaned on him lightly, her steps slow. He asked if she was angry. She shook her head and whispered, "You do not understand. You touched something in me that has never been touched before. Not just my skin, something deeper." Jared helped her sit on the soft resting pad in the chamber. He looked at her and said, "I will not let them hurt you or the child." She reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were warm and her skin pulsed gently beneath his. "You already did more than you know. You changed my future, and now we are linked in a way that cannot be undone." Outside the chamber, scientists and medics prepared their tools. Inside, Jared and Valari sat in silence, her head resting against his shoulder. Whatever happened next would not be just science. It would be a story told for generations. Valari lay back against the soft pillows inside the observation chamber while quiet monitors flickered with readings above her head. The glow in her skin had settled into a calm, steady rhythm, but inside her body everything was still changing. Jared sat beside her, reading the screen. Even though most of the alien text still confused him, he had learned the symbols for heart rate, for neural wave pattern, and for energy flux. But today, A new symbol appeared, one that made the attending medic pause and scan again. The human medic, a tall man named Ellis, looked over the results and turned to Jared with a look that carried both disbelief and worry. "You need to see this yourself," he said, placing the scan on the large display wall. A round orb hovered above the screen, spinning slowly with light pulses flickering inside it. "This is a life form," Ellis said, "and it is forming at an accelerated rate. It carries both her signature and yours." Jared stared at it, his mind blank for a moment. "You are saying this is a pregnancy?" Ellis nodded slowly and added, "And it is not just any pregnancy. This child is biologically unique. It is not a blend through artificial means. It is the result of a natural process started through physical and emotional contact." Valari watched them with calm eyes, her hand resting over her belly. "I already knew," she whispered. "My body told me days ago, but now it is confirmed, and I will not let them remove it or experiment on it. This is my child and his child." Ellis looked nervous and said, "You must understand how serious this is. Cross-species life like this has never survived more than a few cycles. Even with advanced tech, we cannot guarantee safety for her or the baby." Jared stood silent for a while before stepping closer to Velarito. "You want this?" Her eyes met his, and her answer was clear. "Yes, I do. Even if it breaks all laws, even if it changes everything, because when you touched me, I felt whole for the first time. Not just calm, not just safe, I felt chosen." Ellis made a quick call to the medical board and informed them of the confirmed results. Within minutes, messages started flooding the chamber: reports, documents, requests for interviews, and offers from research labs. Some wanted samples, others wanted full custody for scientific protection, but Jared and Valari refused them all. "We will not be separated." Jared said, his voice firm. "You had your chance to prevent this. Now it is part of us outside the chamber." Things were changing fast. The news leaked. Alien networks began broadcasting stories about the human who got a noble Zalari pregnant through simple contact. Protests rose across different zones. Some called Jared a violator of ancient rules. Others called him a sign of evolution. But inside their private room, none of that noise mattered. Valari sat with her legs folded under her, her skin glowing softly in waves. Jared knelt beside her, brushing her hair back. "Do you feel any pain?" he asked. "No pain," she answered, "only strange warmth and dreams I cannot explain. Sometimes I see a child reaching for your face with glowing fingers, and sometimes I hear singing, though no one is there." Ellis returned later with an older woman in dark robes who introduced herself as High Medic Arlene. She was a neutral observer known across the galaxy for her wisdom. In hybrid cases, she spoke slowly and watched both of them with careful eyes. "The child will need both of you to survive," she said. "Separated, the energy bond will collapse. Your connection is more than skin deep. You are now life anchors." Jared asked if the child had a chance. Arlene placed a small sphere on Valari's stomach and watched the colors change. "This one is strong. The glow tells me it has full consciousness, forming faster than normal. But with that speed comes risk. Its emotions will form early, and they will reflect yours. You must keep calm. You must stay close." Valari smiled and said, "Then we will not leave each other's side. Not for a single moment." They spent that night sitting near the wall where stars blinked outside the glass. Valari fell asleep leaning on Jared, her breathing soft and steady. Watched her and felt something stir inside him, a need to protect something more than himself, a need to belong. As the lights dimmed, he whispered a promise into the air: "I will not let anything take this from you, or from me, or from us." The stars above the observation dome pulsed quietly as night fell across Andra Station, but the silence inside was broken by sharp voices. Screens flashed urgent messages across every hallway in the diplomatic wing. The news had spread far beyond anyone's control. Valari's pregnancy was no longer a secret. On every channel across every star system, her name appeared beside Jared's face, and a single headline ran in bold: "Alien noble impregnated by human masses healer outside the chamber." Walls. Angry crowds for Medjalari diplomats arrived in silver ships demanding to speak with Valari in private. Others shouted from the station corridors, calling Jared a corrupter of sacred bloodlines, some even demanded his deportation back to Earth. Under emergency law inside the chamber, Jared stood near the glass wall holding a tray of food he had prepared himself. Valari sat cross-legged on the cushioned floor, her hands pressed gently over her stomach, her skin glowing brighter than ever before. "They are afraid," she said calmly without lifting her eyes, "afraid of what they cannot control, afraid of what does not follow their rules." Jared placed the tray beside her and sat down slowly. "Do you regret it?" he asked. After a long moment of silence, she turned toward him, her silver hair falling across her shoulder. "If I regretted this, I would not be carrying a new life inside mesh." Reached for his hand and placed it over the soft rise of her belly. "Feel it," she whispered. "This is not just a child, this is change. Change always brings fear." The chamber door opened, and High Medic Arlene entered with a message disc in her hand. She spoke with slow, careful words as she placed the disc on the table and pressed it. A projection rose into the air, showing images of Zalari protest leaders and human officials debating on screen. Some demanded Jared be removed, others claimed Valari's judgment was clouded. One voice even said the child must be taken for the safety of the galaxy. Valari rose to her feet, her face calm, but her eyes burning with quiet fire. "I will not let them take my child, and I will not let them take you either." Jared stood beside her, now shoulder to shoulder. "What do we do?" he asked. Arlene looked at both of them and said, "The council has allowed one final review. They want to see the bond with their own eyes. You will need to show them that what happened between you was not a violation, but a union, not confusion but choice." Valari nodded slowly. "Then let them see." She placed her hand against Jared's chest and leaned close. "Let them see everything." The next morning the chamber was opened, and escorted guards led them both to the central rotunda, where the full council waited. The space was filled with diplomats, scientists, and leaders from across known space. At the center stood a biofield scanner designed to read emotions, body signals, and energy resonance. Valari stepped into the field first and closed her eyes. Jared followed and reached for her hand. The scanner lit up immediately. Colors swirled in the air above them, soft hues of gold, blue, and green. Then the field showed something more, a third pulse, smaller but strong, a rhythm that echoed both their signals together. Gasps came from the crowd. The head of the council leaned forward and whispered, "This is true bonding. No tech, no interference, only touch, only presence, only feeling." A Zalari diplomat rose and shouted, "She is sacred blood, is nothing more than a healer from a backwater planet. This is an insult." Valari opened her eyes and looked straight at him. "I chose this Mani, chose him without force, without need. My body chose him, my heart chose him, and now my child carries both our truths." Jared said nothing. He only held her hand tighter, because he knew words were not enough. Now only truth could speak. After a long pause, the council whispered among themselves, then finally delivered the ruling. "You are allowed to remain together. No one may remove the child. No one may separate you without cause. You must remain within the bounds of this station, and your progress will be recorded for the science of all." Jared bowed his head in respect. Valari did not bow. She stood tall, proud, strong. Later that evening, as they returned to the chamber, Valari removed the outer layers of her robe and stood near the window. Bathed in starlight, she turned to Jared and said, "They tried to call it shame, but all I feel is light. I want to feel your hands again, not for healing, not for duty, but because they are yours." Jared walked to her and took her into his arms, their bodies fit together like two halves of something ancient. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by stars and fear and hope, they found something no law could define, something pure, something eternal. The starlight poured through the dome ceiling as Jared stood in silence, watching Valari sleep. Her breathing was soft and steady, her hand resting gently over her stomach, as if guarding the small life growing inside her. Chamber lights were dimmed to a soft blue, and the quiet hum of medical monitors filled the room with a calming rhythm. For the first time in days, the outside world was quiet. No council voices, no angry protests, no scientists demanding tests, just peace. But Jared knew it would not last. He looked down at the message tablet in his hands. Formal document from Earth Command had arrived just hours ago. It offered him a clean return ticket back to Earth. No punishment, no blame, just a quiet removal and full medical clearance. It was a way out, a way to leave all this behind. He stared at the blinking cursor where his answer was expected. His mind flashed back to that first moment when Vilari had walked into his clinic with her strange glow and calm voice. He never imagined it would lead to this, a child bonded war of beliefs across the stars. But now standing here, he no longer saw her as just a noble alien. She was someone he cared for, someone he wanted to protect, even if it meant staying in a place where he would always be watched. Vilari stirred and slowly opened her eyes. She looked up at him with a sleepy smile and whispered, "You are still here." He nodded and sat beside her, brushing a lock of silver hair from her cheek. "They gave me a chance to leave. I could walk away from this, from you." She held his gaze, waiting for the answer. "But I will not go, because the moment I leave this room, I know I will spend the rest of my life wondering if you are safe. Our child is safe, and I will not live with that weight." Vilari reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. "Then you have made your choice. Now I must make mine." Jared looked at her confused. She sat up slowly, her expression more serious now. "I have been offered sanctuary by the Zilari Moon Temple. They said I could raise the child there in secret, away from the station, away from the politics, but it would mean leaving you behind." He blinked, stunned by the words. "You said we would not be separated." "I did, but I wanted to be honest with you, because if you stay here with me, you will live under surveillance forever. You will not be free. Your Earth home will forget you, and your own people may never forgive what you have done." Jared stood and began to pace, his thoughts spinning. He looked at the starlight, then back at her. "Do you want to go to that temple?" She shook her head. "No, because I do not want to hide what we are, what we created. I want to raise our child in light, not in shadow." "Then we stay here," he said firmly. "We raise the child on this station, among humans, among aliens, among questions, but always together." Valerie smiled and leaned her head against his chest. "I feared you would choose the easy path, but you are braver than I thought." He wrapped his arms around her and held her close, feeling her heartbeat match his. Child stirred inside her again, and she gasped softly. "It responds to you even when you are near it. It moves like it knows you already." The door chimed, and High Medic Arlene entered carrying a small case. She placed it on the table and opened it, revealing a glowing band and 2 small vials. "This is the final stage of bonding protocol. It has not been used in over 100 years, but given your case, the council has approved it. It will help link your biosignals permanently and stabilize the child through shared energy." Valerie looked at Jared and nodded. "Let us do it." They each drank from the vials. A warm wave passed through Jared's body, and he felt something inside him shift. Then the band was placed on their joined hands, glowing brightly before vanishing into their skin. Arlene smiled and whispered, "It is done. Your energy is now shared. No one can break this without harm to all 3 of you." Medic left quietly. Jared and Vilari sat in silence for a long time, letting the bond settle. He could feel her warmth in his chest, now a soft echo of her heartbeat beside his own. They had made their choice, not because it was easy, but because it was right. And now, no matter what the stars said, no matter what laws came next, they would face it together as one. The chamber lights glowed in soft golden waves as the moment Aravid Vilari lay on the medical platform, surrounded by trusted medics, while Jared stood at her side, gripping her hand tightly. Her skin pulsed with radiant light, and her breathing came in slow, powerful waves. The child was ready to enter the world. High Medic Arlene stood near the birthing monitors, speaking calmly in both Zilari and Earth languages. Room was silent, except for the hum of energy fields and the rhythmic beat of the unborn heart echoing softly from the screen above them. Jared felt every breath, every tremble, as if it were happening to his own body. Had never witnessed anything like this before, but he knew deep in his soul that this moment was not science, was life. This was something sacred. Vilari cried out once, and her glow burst across the room like sunrise, and then silence again. Tiny sound broke the stillness, a high soft cry that was not fully human, yet not fully alien either. Jared looked down and saw the medic lift the small child from the light cradle. She was glowing with faint energy, her skin smooth and pale with streaks of soft blue along her arms. Her fingers curled in the air, and her chest rose and fell with steady breath. But what struck Jared most were her eyes, wide open from the first second, shining like stars, and fixed directly on him. He took a step forward, unable to speak, as the medic placed her gently into Valari's arms. Valari looked at the child and then up at Jared with tears running down her cheeks. She is perfect. Jared reached down and touched the tiny hand. It wrapped around his finger and squeezed. Then he heard Ida's soft word whispered like wind. Dad. He froze and looked at Valari, who nodded through her tears. Spoke. She chose you first. The chamber doors opened and the council entered, silently standing in a respectful circle around the family. The head counselor stepped forward and bowed his head. This child is now registered as the first confirmed natural hybrid of human and Zalari origin. She will be given protection, education, and full status across both systems. Lifted his eyes and spoke with a steady voice. She will also be raised with love, not as a symbol, not as a subject, but as a daughter. Valari smiled and held the child closer, her glow wrapping around all three of them. The council approved the request for permanent residency and granted Jared and Valari equal guardianship rights outside the station. The news spread across the galaxy. Some cheered, some wept, some shouted in anger, but no one could deny that something new had been born. Not just a baby, but a future. Weeks passed and the chamber was transformed into a home. A small crib floated beside the window where stars blinked like lullabies. Jared walked back and forth with the baby in his arms, humming old Earth songs, while Valari watched with a soft smile. They took turns feeding and soothing her, learning together, laughing when she glowed in the dark, crying when she cried. One night Jared stood on the viewing deck, holding her close while she slept. A quiet whisper came behind him. You never planned for this life. He turned and saw Valari walking toward him, wrapped in a soft robe, her hair glowing faintly in the starlight. No, I did not, but now I cannot imagine any other life. She stood beside him and rested her head on his shoulder. Do you ever miss Earth? Sometimes, but only the silence of the trees and the sound of rivers, not the life I hadn't. At the loneliness. He turned to face her. Because I was always waiting for something I could not name, and now I have. I'd have you. I have her. Valari placed her hand over his heart and whispered, then let us raise her strong and kind. Let her walk through stars without fear. Let her know that she came from something rare, not mistake, not accident, but choice. And Jared nodded, because no one could take this away now. The council, not the laws, not the doubts. They were family, a new kind of family made, not from rules, but from love, from hope, and from a touch that changed everything.